This man controls what you watch, who wins and who gets paid in football, but his empire is crumbling. How Qatar Shadow King turned PSG into a weapon, conquered UEFA, and now faces total collapse. Stick till the end to see the leaked documents that could end his reign forever. He was not born with the weight of empires in his palms, but Nasser bin Ghanem Al Khalifi would come to possess a grip so firm on the heart of football that even presidents, princes, and billionaires would learn to orbit his decisions. When Qatar placed him at the helm of the Qatar Tennis Federation in 2008, it wasn't because of his forehand. It was because Tamim had a vision, and in Nasser, he found the executor. That appointment was the beginning of a climb no sports administrator had ever attempted with such audacity. From Tennis Federation to media dominion, Nasser Al Khalifi stepped into Al Jazeera Sports with an eye not just for coverage, but for conquest. He moved through broadcasting rights like a strategist in war, seizing tennis, then football, then everything that connected eyeballs to emotion. When Qatar Sport Investments emerged in 2011 as the sovereign wealth funnel for athletic domination, it was no surprise that Al Khalifi became its chosen general. That same year, he was handed the presidency of Paris Saint-Germain, a club that at the time was more abandoned theater than football cathedral. But where others saw a fading institution, he saw a stage, a jewel waiting to be cut and polished until it could blind the world. Paris Saint-Germain was not just a club, it became a statement. When Javier Pastor walked in as a record signing, it was not about the player, it was a symbol. Denquemi Thiago Silva, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Neymar da Silva Santos Jr., Lionel Andrés Messi, and Kylian Mbappé. Each name was a syllable in a new language of power, spoken fluently by Al Khalifi. He understood that in modern football, stars are not just players. They are assets, influencers, magnets for global commerce. In 5 years, PSG went from sleepy mid-tier to cultural monolith. The badge was redesigned, Paris made prominent. The kits became sleek canvases for fashion as much as football. Parc des Princes became less of a stadium and more of a runway, a diplomatic reception, a studio of influence. He told his staff that guests at PSG must feel like they've walked into a 5-star hotel, not a sport arena. The club became a luxury product because its president viewed football not as tradition, but as a scalable brand experience. But trophies were not the ultimate currency. Attention was. And where attention flows, broadcasters pay. That is why Al Khalifi didn't stop at the pitch. Through beIN Sports, he began to own the very lens through which football is seen. La Liga, Serie A, Bundesliga, Champions League. Entire continents began to filter their football diet through a Qatar-controlled pipeline. This was not accidental. It was infrastructural conquest. He built the roads of modern football commerce. And then he sold the toll. At one point, beIN wasn't just a broadcaster. It became a national asset, so significant that its theft by Saudi Arabia's pirate network triggered a diplomatic standoff. Nasser Al Khalifi was not just shaping the game anymore. He was dictating terms of international relations through football signal rights. In the game of empires, sponsors are the financiers of narrative, and Al Khalifi played that symphony with conductor's precision. PSG's sponsorship revenue didn't just break records, it embarrassed competitors. By 2024, the club raked in 415 million euros in sponsorships alone. That figure eclipsed the entire revenue pool of most leagues. Qatar Airways, Qatar National Bank, Ooredoo, Visit Qatar. The names weren't random. They were extensions of the same orbit, aligned by national strategy and financial intimacy. Where other clubs saw sponsors as partners, Al Khalifi saw them as national instruments. When financial fair play rules questioned the related party nature of these deals, he didn't blink. He had already reshaped the landscape to fit his ambitions. This wasn't just club management. This was nation branding. PSG became a French club in name, but in identity, it wore Qatari fingerprints across every layer of its business. When Zlatan Ibrahimovic once proclaimed, "We represent Paris, France, and Qatar," he wasn't just speaking from a player's podium. He was reading from Al Khalifi's script. But power within a club, a league, a broadcast network, those are temporary thrones. Al Khalifi's ultimate ambition was governance itself. In 2021, after the collapse of the European Super League. He replaced Andrea Agnelli as chairman of the European Club Association. It was a coup dressed as promotion. The 12 clubs who tried to stage their own breakaway competition had done so without PSG. Al-Khelaifi refused to defect. UEFA repaid him with loyalty, appointments, and unshakable backing, even when corruption allegations hovered like vultures. UEFA President Alexander Ceferin didn't just defend him. He tied his presidency to Al-Khelaifi's continued involvement. It was as if the two were bound by a pact sealed behind closed doors, written in influence instead of ink. He sat on UEFA's executive committee, was handed carte blanche in negotiations with broadcasters, and stood beside Emmanuel Macron during diplomatic talks, not just in sporting contexts, but in matters of war and peace. In 2023, Al-Khelaifi was seen at the Élysée Palace alongside Qatari envoys and French officials during discussions over the Israel-Gaza conflict. Imagine that, a former tennis player turned club president mediating near matters of statecraft. That's not a football story. That's a parable of modern soft power. The kind that cannot be voted out, cannot be benched, and cannot be ignored. But power attracts challenge. And Al-Khelaifi's greatest challenge did not come from boardrooms, nor from FIFA headquarters, nor from Saudi rivals. It came from within his own camp, from a man he once viewed as PSG's crown jewel, Kylian Mbappé Latin, the French wunderkind who once rejected Real Madrid to build a dynasty in Paris, turned from protege to litigant. In 2024, Mbappé left the club, not quietly, not gratefully, but furiously, pursuing 55 million euros in unpaid wages and bonuses. His lawyers didn't stick to the usual sporting arbitration. They took Al-Khelaifi to civil and criminal court. They even requested PSG's bank accounts be partially frozen and that the club be banned from the Champions League. It wasn't just legal, it was nuclear. The club responded with denial. They claimed there was a verbal agreement, that Mbappé had agreed to leave for free and waive his due. But Mbappé's camp didn't just want money. They framed the case as a crusade for transparency, for players' rights, for a seat at the table once reserved only for executives. In truth, this was a deeper reckoning, one that threatened to expose the very machinery Al-Khelaifi had spent a decade constructing. For all his power, all his titles, here was the one truth he could not unmake. Players now had power too. It was a lesson that reverberated far beyond Paris. Football is no longer ruled by men in suits alone. Players tweet, players livestream, players sway public sentiment with a wink, a silence, or a subtle contract leak. And then there are the fans, the final node of this massive constellation. They do not write checks, but they dictate value. They do not attend board meetings, but they define relevance. Every protest, every chant, every empty seat is a vote cast in the most unforgiving democracy, popular culture. They are the only ones Al-Khelaifi cannot out-negotiate, because if they walk away, the sponsors vanish, the broadcasters pull out, the politicians stop calling. The illusion collapses. So yes, Nasser bin Ghanem Al-Khelaifi may be for now the most powerful man in football. He owns the club, controls the cameras, writes the deals, and influences the regulators. He can get Amir on the phone faster than a manager can call a timeout. But his kingdom is not eternal. It stands on shifting terrain, players, fan, politics, and perception. The fisherman's son who used to dive for pearls now dives into boardroom battles, international politics, and media chess matches. He does not dribble a ball, but he controls who sees it when and on what screen. He does not wear a jersey, but his fingerprints are on every modern kit sold around the globe. His is a reign crafted not on the grass, but in the gray zones, where influence, image, and invisibility intersect. And yet, no matter how far his reach extends, no matter how many titles he holds, Al-Khelaifi remains a servant to the one truth no administrator can escape. Football belongs to the people, and the moment they decide to reclaim it, even the most powerful man in football must reckon with a new world he cannot control. Is Nasser Al-Khelaifi the mastermind reshaping modern football, or a symbol of everything the sport has lost? Can one man hold this much power without consequence? Has the game become a showroom of influence rather than a battlefield of merit? Tell us what you believe in the comments. And if you're ready for more untold truths behind the power games of football, subscribe and stay ahead of the story.